Hi, everyone. Here's part 2 of my conversation with Brigitte Bertrand. If you missed part 1, feel free to go back and check it out. But know that when you come back for part 2, you're in for a real treat. We're going even deeper into some of the most captivating topics about femininity, sensuality, and living unapologetically. This episode is one you don't want to miss. So, let me ask you another question. Let's forget about men and all of the other things, and let's talk about France. So,
Yes.
You have lived in both France and New York City,
Yes.
two very distinct cultural environments. And I'm wondering, how have these places shaped your approach to femininity, style, and self-expression? And what do you think French women embrace that American women could learn from?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, I love that question. So I would say definitely one thing already kind of the top of my mind is that I would say French women are more daring in a different way. They're more daring with their heart. They're more willing to take risks. With French people want to fall in love. They don't really care about labels. I mean, there is still a time and place for labels and so forth, but they just want to fall in love because they know it's one of the great joys and great pleasures in life. And I think one of the things that French people do very well is simplicity, is kind of scaling things down, is kind of, even if you look at French women makeup in Paris, there's this effortlessness. There's this chic because like I care, but I don't really care. Like I'm put together, but like I didn't spend too much time on this. And so after living 4 years in LA and I moved to Paris, where I was going to acting school in Paris, I had no confidence. My confidence was completely shot out. A relationship that didn't work out kind of was like the last straw with somebody who was very jealous, and their way of projecting that was basically making me feel unattractive by not even touching me, not even hugging me towards the end. And not that I'm somebody that like I need that touch or I need compliments, but you do want to feel that you are seen by your partner. So when I was in Paris, it was like I had just finished that cycle of seeing my worth through men's eyes and seeing how false that is. And so I was like at zero. I literally had no confidence. I was doing Stanislavski method acting, which is very physical and very in tune with kind of developing your senses. And I think the French are really good about being in tune with their senses. They really take the time to smell things. They really take their time to chew. They take their time to really like, even if you're going to have love in the afternoon in France, they're taking the whole afternoon, and you're drinking wine while you're doing it. But I think part of what is linked to the kind of the woman that I am today and what France has brought me is definitely that slowing down and tuning in on a deeper level, and kind of that willing to put my heart on the line because I gotta live. You gotta live. You can't. French women are bold in that they're willing to take more risks. I feel that more compared to American women on certain things.
That's fascinating.
And I think American women are more willing to go up to men and kind of signify that they're interested. And in France, there's still a little bit of that seduction of that dance and about the enjoyment of that dance. And I think the universe is playful. Like we are meant to dance. We are meant to seduce one another, not even in a romantic way. We're even supposed to seduce ourselves every day.
Yes, it's the best.
And I think also in the way that I dress, when I'm performing, kind of the less is more is very, very central. and kind of even the way that I shop is having more like timeless pieces, but they're really, really well made rather than having a bunch of different things, and kind of
Not
more
following the
finding,
trends.
yeah, and kind of more finding like what really, like, what do you really enjoy wearing? What makes you feel sexy? And sometimes feeling sexy is just a fabric. It's not how the fabric feels on your skin.
Yep.
And I think French women are really, really good about kind of zoning in a little bit more on that. And still, like, they're trendy and so forth. But I do feel that, and I think French women could learn a lot of things from American women too. About maybe being bold in other ways, being like, I think we can each can learn from each other, but living in France is definitely a blessing, and I highly recommend. I mean, like, even just for yourself, like, live in Paris for a year. Live in Paris for a year. It's not going to be like Emily in Paris, but in some ways it will be like Emily in Paris. And that there is something magical and mystical about Paris, and it is a great way to get connected to your desire. The French, they love talking about their desire, and the art de vivre, literally the art of life, of living, that is very central to French culture, is about taking that desire and making it tangible. And the French are
gosh.
very good at doing that.
I can't believe you're saying this. So so my dream in life was always to go to Paris. And I finally got to go in my 50th year. And I just spent so much time observing there. And I noticed everything that you were talking about with fashion. And also I found this interesting, and actually we could relate to this in New York City too. They have smaller closets. So they have to be pretty strict about what they bring into that closet. So they go for quality over trends. And I feel like that could be the case here too. I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of trends that I'm kind of disappointed by, but that's another story. So anyway, while I was in Paris, I thought I really want to do a workshop for women here as a photographer, but more than that, on how to bring the sensuality of like a French woman into their lives, bring it back to America. And so one of the things I wanted to do, and actually is something I did, was I went to the Crazy Horse show. And then I found a dancer from the Crazy Horse show and had her give me a private dance class. It was a private cabaret class. And it was, oh my God, it was such a thrill, but also it was so painstakingly slow. Each movement we were doing in that cabaret dance that we did together was so slow. And to me, slow is sexy. Sexy is slow because it's deliberate. It's controlled intent, right? So I just wanted to bring that back to women and create a retreat there. So I don't know, one day, be on the lookout. Maybe I'll make it happen.
Absolutely.
I talked about it when I got back, but you know, life happens. So, and now I'm in New York. So yay.
Well, I think it's almost the delayed satisfaction. It's almost like there's this sense of really living. There's this sense of taking your time to do things. I have a friend of mine that she told me in French, les plus belles histoires d'amour sont celles qui durent le plus longtemps. Is the most beautiful love stories are the ones that take the longest. And it is very romantic if you think about it. And I think also one thing that popped up in my mind when you were talking about cabaret and so forth is also in France, a woman having a big sexual appetite is accepted and acceptable. And it is very much not shamed upon. It's almost like if you don't have a sexual appetite, then you don't have appetite, which is like you want appetite. In French, we say bon appétit because we invite this pleasure of eating, this pleasure of living. And I think, and in French culture, women having and embracing that sexual appetite is normal. And I think in the US, that's still something that does carry certain shame and that there still is that that puritanism that's kind of like, oh well, like a woman who has sexual appetite is obviously like a harlot,
Right.
and not necessarily a woman of class, because how could class and sexual appetite live hand by hand when that is very untrue for French people. And I think now it is that there is a little bit more of a discussion of, oh, like, yes, like certain women do have a very big sexual appetite and there's nothing wrong with that. But
Yeah. And I
it's,
mean, I think our hormones are tied into that. I always had a huge appetite for everything in life, everything. But now I'm finding like after menopause, it's different. And so I'm trying to make sense of that. But I'm reminded of a study that I saw probably 10, maybe even 15 years ago, where they discovered that French women over the age of 50 had way better sex lives than American women do. And there are so many reasons behind that. And I can't remember what it said, but I feel like they are more celebrated as sexual beings, aging naturally. They're looked at with wisdom, like wisdom is sexy there. Whereas we hold youth as what we all need to achieve here.
I always
And so you're in but you're in trouble if that's what you're aspiring to, because, you know, that's an impossible thing. And even to be attracted to, you don't want to be attracted to a 20-year-old your whole life, you know?
I tell my guy friends that to go towards older women, to at least have some sort of sexual interaction with an older woman, because they will learn a lot and it will make them a better lover.
Oh yeah.
And that I think that that's also something that's a little bit more acceptable about kind of different age differences and kind of having people be learning experiences. And that, you know, that not every single person that you know, even kiss, like, has to be that person. And that's I think a little bit more more true in France. There's not that like finality of, oh, just because you're romantically linked to this person that you guys are definitely going to get married. There is still a little bit of that, but interesting also about what you said. And I remember, I think I read the same study, or it was one that was in conjunction with the one that you're talking about, that there's no longer that people pleasing aspect when you hit 60. There's no longer that obsession with youth, because you're like, I'm older and this is it. And that there's a freeing aspect of that, of kind of like, well,
there
yeah,
is.
when you're not spending so much time thinking about what other people think, and more using that energy being like, how can I explore my new self constantly, because we are constantly changing. Our desires are constantly, our sexuality also is changing. And and I'm excited about being older. Like, that's not something, like, I'm very excited about it. Because like you said, like that wisdom and so forth just makes things more fun. It's kind of like you've been through it all and you're just wide-eyed and being like, oh, well, I can handle this, I can handle that, so I'll just put myself in this situation and see what happens.
Yeah, there's clarity and confidence, and it's really a beautiful thing. And also, you know, speaking of encouraging men to date older, have you noticed all of the movies coming out right now?
Yes.
There's so many where it's like an older woman and this hot guy that's in his 20s.
Yes. So, which is really funny, that when the Anne Hathaway movie came out, was around the time that I started seeing the guy that I was seeing this summer, and he's 22. And I usually have gone for men 20 years older than I am. But the level of emotional maturity, off the charts.
Wow.
Just like that comprehension, that really sense of being held, of being heard, of being seen, of feeling safe. I never experienced that on a level with a man. And it was so incredibly gratifying. So I think it does go both ways. Because I think, like, also why this trend is kind of happening more is because I think you do get to a certain age where you're very clear with yourself about what you want, about where, and I think there's certain men who are just not able to have that kind of clarity, and who are not anchored in their masculinity. and that kind of clarity comes through a lot of different ways, through life experiences, through upbringing, through situation, through also active work and learning from life, or so time that you dedicate for that. And that it's sometimes easier with a younger man because they don't, I don't want this to sound bad, but they don't have this hatred of women on a certain level, because it's like certain men, they really take at heart, like, well, this one did this to me and this one did this to me. And they do kind of find themselves in this victim mentality, and they kind of lose sight, when sometimes with younger men, they haven't necessarily like been through the ringer. And so they're just more open-minded, and they're not going to be like, oh, well, this was like this with my ex. So, or where they kind of come in with less expectations and more of that, like, well, let's explore and kind of see what happens kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
well, they're also not holding on to the power. The men over a certain age are trying desperately to retain power that they feel is being stripped away by giving it equally to other people. So I feel like that's where younger is a better thing too.
So I just actually finished the new movie on Netflix that's with Laura Dern and Liam Hemsworth, and Morocco. I was very pleasantly surprised by the kind of subtle things that were coming through in the movie, and one of them was just this ability of kind of stripping things down and really just seeing people for who they are, and not who you want them to be, or or kind of coming back to this state of like kind of the way that we feel when we're like 10, 12 and we're having a sleepover with our friends, and we feel this initial joy of being like, this is the kind of people that we want. And there is actually this moment where one of the characters is kind of shamed for not having a certain level of intelligence. And obviously you see that the other character is just not seeing the person. They are misconstrued, as in like they're not aligned with themselves, so they're projecting and literally shaming somebody for that level of intelligence, or it's just horrible. It's just and I think that I'm happy that this is something that is becoming a little bit more acceptable, because on a human level, I think the more experiences and the wider different set of experiences that we have, we do become better people if we really learn from those. So, yeah.
So we're still on this topic of age, and another question I wanted to ask is, are there any things you're doing now to help you ease into aging later on?
Yes, I'm really happy actually you brought that up, because a very big central focus, I think, for a lot of women that literally clouds our day every single day. If you look at ads that are targeted towards women, it tends to be, oh, how to lift this, how to make those wrinkles disappear, how this and that. So I don't think men realize the degree of how much we actually associate our value with how youthful we look. And I think there is something to be said. I think like vitality is important. I think vitality is sexy. I think I don't you can have vitality and have wrinkles. What is very important for me is I do consciously try to invest in my future self. So a lot of the conscious risks that I take is to invest in her, is to give me more tools, is to challenge myself so that I can show up differently and even stronger in everything that I do. So that is something I definitely do very actively. I think that I'm kind of taking it day by day about how I want to orient my life. I definitely have like a teacher's soul. And so my end goal is living by the ocean, as a professor, public communications professor, and with my 2 dogs and an incredible record collection. That's my end goal. So it's kind of like everything in
I
between.
love that.
So everything in between is kind of like extra. And I will not be able to be an effective teacher if I will not have lived myself, if I will not have made mistakes.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I've just never really been afraid of aging. I think I've always looked forward to it because it is really a
Me
privilege.
too.
It really is a privilege
Yes.
to not only experience life, but to actually experience life on a certain scale where even like your vessel is shows that. I think that like gray hair is beautiful, and I've always had gray hairs, which I think is hilarious. Since I was like little, I've always had gray hairs, and I never was like, oh, this is ugly. I was just kind of like, oh wow, this is here, kind of cool. Like I think like aging is very exciting because the older I get, the happier I become in my everyday life.
There are studies to confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we should embrace it. And also, when I was little, you talked about the gray hair. You always thought it was sexy. I remember my mom had the 11 lines between her eyebrows, and I could not wait to get those for myself. So, like, where are we disconnecting from that? But I also want to mention something else. Have you seen the movie The Substance with Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley?
I have not. Yes.
I haven't either. And
things, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know that I can handle it because I'm not really good with gore. I may have to watch it through my Windows reflection from home. but I was reading about the premise, and it's kind of like an older woman and her younger self. It's not really her younger self. I don't know. But it's like stealing from the woman you become. Like that's what I'm thinking of when I read about this movie. So I can't wait to see it somehow. Well, maybe I'll just listen to it.
A lot of people will agree that some of the most beautiful women are not necessarily young women. They're older women who are often matriarchs, who have often led the family, and who emanate this kind of strength and this kind of radiance that's very singular to them. That if you even think of like somebody like Diane Keaton has had gray hair for a long time, and even if like something's got to give, like the way Keanu Reeves is just like, oh yeah, I want a piece of that, like he's like, oh yeah, because she's hot, she's hot because like she's connected to something within her, and
she knows herself.
Exactly. And I think the real definition of beauty is linked to that. It's kind of beauty is like love. It's like you don't really, like it's hard to explain because there's so many different shades of it, but when it's in front of you. You recognize its essence.
You have to read the book Seductress. It's about non-traditional beauties and how they had power over men or societies. Oh my gosh, this book is so good. And I feel like every woman should read that in our society where we put such an importance on surface beauty.
Yeah. Well, I think, Audrey Hepburn's quote is often like requoted about kind of like how beauty comes like from the lips through kind words and so forth. That of course we're all conditioned to think of beauty in a certain kind of way on a surface level. But I think that is being very much broken down a lot of seeing how fleeting that is, and that sometimes somebody who is on the surface extremely beautiful does not have nice intentions, does not do things from a place of love, and that in some ways like makes them unattractive.
Yes,
makes them unattractive because it's almost like the way somebody just is in that light and in that intention, and I think there is an intention behind beauty that is of love. In some ways you're making love to the world by creating more beauty because you're honoring it and the power of life.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
And that surface of course has its place, but the inside, the fundamental is really what brings it all together. It really is. It's because it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, yeah, you can have that external beauty, but if there's nothing inside to hold it, it's not whole. It's not whole.
Oh,
It's just it's very breakable. It's very temporary.
fragile.
And
Yes.
so, I have a friend of mine who's an artist. She paints. She's very, very talented, and she's very devoted to her art. And a lot of times when she speaks, what she tries to create is just beauty every day in any sort of way. And I think
That's me as a
really awesome.
photographer.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely with your ethos.
Well, speaking of that, me being a photographer, I did a photo shoot for you for our blog post on Femme Fatale
Yes.
Files. You did something really interesting in curating your outfit selections by kind of basing them on characters. And I wonder if you could tell me more about that. Can you remember what the names of the characters were?
Absolutely. I think it's like kind of also like stylistically how I have different things that I like. I think my sense of style is like rock and roll, old Hollywood. They're pretty much in like a long dress or like in motorcycle boots and like a leather jacket, like ready to hop on a motorcycle and kind of like in between those two. And so Little Lost Lady in the City of Light. So that person has just always been like really, he's always really resonated with me in kind of this like chaotic poetry kind of way. And so that was definitely inspired by one of the looks, because Little Lost Lady in City of Light is one of the lyrics of LA Woman, actually. Then La Bella Italiana is obviously inspired by Monica Bellucci, which she is ethereal. She is incredible. She literally, for me, like embodies that like kind of like classic Italian glam, but in a kind of rustic way, but always, I mean, like there's a reason why her pictures keep on kind of resurfacing, is because it really is just like a little bit of makeup and like a cute dress, and she's bringing it. You know, she's really,
There's a
really
natural
bringing
sensuality.
it. Yes.
A natural sensuality about her that she just exudes at all times.
Yes. And I think my father, his favorite women are Italian women. That's he'll say it out loud anytime. He's like, he loves Italian women. So I think that's also my way of kind of being like I respect that, Dad.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. And then the next one was La Bébé d'aujourd'hui, which is the BB of today, which of course refers to Brigitte Bardot. Literally behind me, a big part of my life, because I've literally carried her name my whole life. And kind of like a modern interpretation of kind of like a modern Bardot. Bardot was very central in the 60s to the women in like emancipation movement. She actually, after World War II, she embodied a lot of these new values, and kind of even through her sense of style. And so I want to acknowledge that of kind of her trailblazing aspect. And there is also still a dark side to like the way that she lived and her fame and so Vadim and so forth. Yeah, I kind of try to be like my own BB and basically I'm the BB of today. And that kind of like, yeah, I don't have to explain who Brigitte Bardot is. I think probably will not really know. And there was Gilda. So that was the last look with the gloves and so forth. Rita Hayworth. Just when I was little, I definitely watched Gilda way too young, because like I don't think 7-year-olds should be watching Gilda, but maybe they should be watching Gilda, because that's how I ended up being like how I am.
What about a modern day femme fatale?
Of today, I don't feel like I have anyone that I really feel like is embodying those things. I think the closest I would say is Chapelle Roan, definitely. She's provocative. I think a lot of people are not
Mm-hmm.
provocative. They don't let themselves be provocative. They are so
Yeah,
afraid
that's
of being
interesting.
canceled. And I understand that. I understand that fear of like being canceled, you know? But
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are taking risks of being super provocative unless, and I think she kind of has been like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. And like people are like, wait, what? Like everybody else like would have done that and like killed for them. She's like, you know, like I don't want to do like she's like I don't want to do brand deals. She's like if I'm not aligned with that, like I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's provocative. I think that's provocative because that in some ways that's embodying her truth rather than just
It's
going with
knowing
the status
yourself.
quo. Absolutely.
Yeah, knowing
Absolutely.
yourself and staying true to
Yeah.
who you are.
Finish on Gilda. Um, you know, there's also the famous quote about like, you know, men went to bed with Gilda and would wake up next to Rita, that Rita Hayworth said herself. But one of the things that I think I love so much about the movie was that even though all these different men wanted to control her, she was like, I'm going to rebel and still be myself. I'm going to rebel and still go up on that stage and give them the best number that they've ever seen and just let my hair go. And you know what? Blame it on me. Put the blame on Mame, you know? And I think I really love that. I think it still very much resonates in kind of being like, even though all of these external factors, even though all these men are trying to control me and in some ways like cage me, and she is caged literally at certain points in that movie, I'm still going to steady on and be my full-fledged sensual self. And I think that is one of the most powerful means of rebellion, is being your sensual self as a woman.
Oh, I love that. And I don't know why I'm reminded of the movie The Holiday
Mhm.
with, oh my gosh, who is it? Kate.
Cameron,
What is her
yeah.
name from
Well, Cameron
from
Diaz,
Titanic?
Jude Law, and Kate Winslet. Yes.
Yes. And the little old man neighbor where he produced all the movies or wrote all the movies, and he's
Hmm.
talking about she needs to study the women with gumption.
Hmm.
And like, I would love to find a list of what movies he's thinking of, to just study them and see, because I don't think we have a lot of those characters today.
I think
Could it be like Sharon Stone and what was that movie?
Basic
Fatal
Instinct.
Basic
That's Glenn
Instinct. Oh yeah,
Close.
and then there's
Yes.
Glenn Close
Yeah.
and
Yes.
Fatal Attraction. That's also problematic. So yeah, where are our femme fatale todays? Because I think we need them.
I think the closest you could probably find, and you might find this answer funny, is actually Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine is a badass in her own right. She's still very much alive and well and kicking. And I mean, if you look at her career, and Sophie's a badass. She is a badass. And I think she's always been provocative. And I think that's probably the closest I could find, because like you said, I'm not seeing those values, and not like necessarily those values, but everything that we've talked about really embodied in a person, I believe, in the public eye right now. And the closest, like I said, would be Chappelle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, and that there's a big need, and hopefully that need will be filled on some sort of level. And I think it's having discussions like these that help create that kind of that kind of like an environment or atmosphere so that these things can happen.
That's exactly why I'm doing this series. Oh my gosh. So I do have a question about the photo shoot.
Yes.
Was there anything that stood out or surprised you about the process? Because it all happened so fast. We just
Mhm.
found each other on Instagram and I was like, would you like to be a femme fatale for me?
I'm like, I
And
am
you're
a
like,
femme fatale.
yes. I know. So, I mean, you didn't know much about me. That could have gone really wrong.
Well, I think since I've been modeling for quite some time, as in like I started pretty young, you do get a sense pretty quickly about who you want to shoot with and who you don't want to shoot with. Just because, like, you know, when I was kind of starting off and it was model mayhem, like it was mainly predators on that site and that were
Right.
not being vetted. They were kind of being vetted, but not really. And like a
Yeah.
lot of times when some sort of photographer that has some sort of prominence, you know, does, and not all of them do. And I think it's like any sort of, uh, you know, area, there's always going to be a small percentage of people who behave badly. But I think when you, as a model, you do become very vulnerable. I definitely felt a sense of ease off the get-go through our communication. It was really interesting for me because I think I've kind of been putting myself on hold as a woman, just from a few different reasons. And one of them is just from being a caretaker to my father, with my mother in the south of France for a few years. I just like, my life was just kind of not for me for a minute. It was not for dating. It was not for, it was maybe for doing girly things here and there, but like I was not putting makeup on. I was not really getting dressed up. It was just being there and being present and helping with what needed to get done. So coming back to New York and doing the photo shoot with you was like a big kind of step into this new chapter. And I was afraid. I was like, what if I like can't bring it? Like, what if I think I know how to ride the bike, but I actually forgot? When it's like, yeah, it's like riding a bike. You get right back into it. So, so I think like it helps tune me back into my sensual self on a deeper level. And also kind of like, and coming back to ageism, you know, I hadn't shot in quite some time and I do look different and I do look older and that's fine with me. And in some ways I actually do look younger. And was kind of also being like, oh, well, yeah, like I, not only do I still have it, but I'm more finessed. I'm more finessed. I'm less clumsy, and that I'm slower too.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about, that seduction, I
more
take
intentional.
a little bit more. Exactly. I'm more intentional. And I think I was actually very happily surprised because it was a moment where I did feel very exposed, but where I actually showed to myself the degree and the depth of who I've become as a woman.
That's so beautiful.
Was a true gift. So thank you.
You're so welcome. So many women are hesitant to get in front of the camera, but in today's world, our public image is everything. And so they all need some good images of themselves. So what would you say to encourage someone who's thinking about doing a photo session? Yeah, what would you say to them?
So I would already say that playing on your unique features is really, really important. Kind of coming back to the less is more, as in that I think even the way we dress, we're like, oh, I should be dressing like this and that, because this is like what's, you know, I think kind of coming back to like what really makes us happy. Like, and if you want to like wear you know, like yellow stockings, like because that's making you feel great, wear yellow stockings. You know, is that like the first thing that people are going to maybe find attractive? Not necessarily, but like if that's what makes you feel, you know, like fun and vibrant, absolutely go for it. But I would say even just for like the makeup, like the way that, like for instance, I've always kind of, not always, but like we all have like little things that are kind of like, it's kind of annoying. I've always had these big eyes, these big alien eyes that are a little bit droopy, and they have a little droopy like what you would call it, like Drew Barrymore lips. And I think I used to be like, oh well, you know, I don't like these things because they're not like innately pretty or whatever. And then I found that actually just leaning into that and leaning into, yeah, you know what, these are my features and I'm actually going to play them up.
Yeah.
That's like more interesting. And
But even doing the shoot it's a way to embrace the reality of your features. It's like,
absolutely.
okay, I'm maybe uncomfortable with some of these things about myself, but I'm going to do this photo session for me and acknowledge that this is who I am and embrace all of it.
Yes,
So I love that you
absolutely.
brought up the features, and because some people get wrapped up in worrying about the small things instead of just learning to appreciate them.
Absolutely. And I think I also wear a little bit less makeup than I used to. And I'm just like a little bit more like mindful, more about like my skin, spending a little bit more time on my skin rather than and just making it like have that like glow. It's kind of coming back to like what would I advise? I would advise for women to actually take a risk, actually like be the underwear model that you always wanted to be and embrace how that looks. Because you know what? This is your body, it's functioning, it's healthy, it serves you, it's your sanctuary, and there should be absolutely no shame around it or in it in any sort of way because it is beautiful however it is because it is alive.
It's so true. So usually with my photo sessions, it'll be depending on which package they get, they are allowed a certain amount of outfit changes. And so usually I would say if this is their first time doing it, to wear something that you feel comfortable in.
Yeah.
Because your body, when you're uncomfortable in your own skin,
Mm-hmm.
looks different. Your shoulders end up there, and so I encourage that. Like, wear what you're comfortable in that represents who you are, but also who you want to be. Because they do taking these images can be a step towards the next phase in your life, like yours was. And then the next time people come in after their first shoot with me, then they go really wild. I've noticed.
Absolutely.
So the first time they're pretty comfortable, then they do their fantasy shoot.
No. I love that, and I want to add to that that a lot of times we don't think that we are beautiful, that we're aging, or that we don't look good, or whatever. And then years later, we come back to those pictures at that moment and we're like, oh my God, look how great I looked. Look how youthful I look.
I
Or look
know.
how great this and that. And in that moment, we didn't appreciate that. I think one of the very powerful things in what you're doing is that you're capturing a moment in time where women can look back and be proud of who they are.
Yes. And it doesn't even have to be images for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It can be images for the future you. I mean, my mom had images that she had somebody do privately that she never showed anybody. And she never showed me till I was an adult. And she was in a bikini holding a stuffed animal. And that was for her own record of her life. So there's something to that. It doesn't have to be for the world. So I want to start wrapping this up, but I do want to ask you, since we're in New York City, where are some places that you like to go here that bring out your inner femme fatale?
Absolutely. So it's a really great piano bar called the Nines. That's like very, very like, yeah, actually have a postcard of it here. So I have a postcard wall. So this is the Nines. This is inside the
Oh,
Nines. Really fun, classy, like just like velvet and great lighting and so forth. I'm actually going to be a booker and for a new piano bar that's going to be opening. That's kind of O Bar 56. So watch out
oh,
for that because that's definitely going to be super, super fun in that
like
aspect.
The big O bar,
Oh
or
no,
like OH?
AAU space bar 56. And it's going
Oh,
to be
okay.
a super high-end piano bar that's going to be opening up, and I'm going to be curating the music and so forth, the different acts.
Amazing.
And I also really love the portrait bar. That's like it's in a hotel. It's like this little space. It's just like very discreet but like comfortable. A lot of times what makes me feel good is actually like comfortable seating. Like
Right?
if I'm not seated comfortably, like I just don't feel like like you need back support. You need like something soft.
Yes, a little cushion.
Yes. So definitely those places, those are already pretty great. And I feel like they are very like New York, kind of like have a little bit of nostalgia. Barretto, where I used to work, also another jazz club, that is also, it is fun to go there, and it is a little bit more high end. So you do feel like, and what I mean by high end is that there's just a little bit more curation on like lighting and kind of just like the ambiance and so forth.
I love
Because
good
I don't think
ambiance.
anyone loves really strong overhead lighting that's blinding you. Like it's just
No,
not, but when
not
there's
a
like
good vibe.
candlelight or that kind of thing, there is, and it actually helps us relax too, having like those lower lights. It does
Yeah,
really
there's a
help facilitate.
thoughtfulness
Yes, but
in
it
the
also,
design.
yes, absolutely. But I also feel like it does kind of help ease as well. I feel like part of feeling that, like a big part of like your sensual self is being relaxed, is feeling comfortable. Or else those things just can't happen. That kind of seductress energy, I would say.
Ah,
So yeah, those would
so
be kind
true.
of like my recommendations, especially for like some fun music. Absolutely, absolutely.
I love
So
it. Okay,
yes.
and the last question
Hmm.
is if you could give one piece of advice to women seeking to live more unapologetically, what would it be?
Oh wow. Um, find your scent. So
Oh,
so like explore in perfumes and kind of have like different perfumes for different, like what you're trying to go with your day, or kind of what you not necessarily want from a situation, but kind of, and have that be part of your armada. I feel like my dresses are kind of like my weapons,
oh,
and that my perfumes are kind of like my artillery that go with my weapons. And I think a person can have their different weapons. And what I mean by weapon is more like woman in a dress that she feels beautiful and is a weapon, because there is incredible power, because there's this sense of self, this sense of sensuality, this sense of like, oh yeah, that is priceless, that is very intangible, that's very yeah, that's very fleeting, but
mm-hmm.
very apparent when it is present. So I would say investing in yourself and having these little weapons for yourself, like having that kind of perfume when you really want to seduce someone, or having another perfume for when you want to bring attention to yourself, even in a professional setting, but of something fresh and bright, or that kind of thing, kind of depending. Um, that these can be tools, uh, and that in some ways, like it's kind of almost this like military thing for me, where it's like I try to prepare for whatever, and through wearing a particular kind of perfume, wearing a dress I feel a particular kind of way, even the shoes where I feel comfortable to move around in a particular way, that I feel like I'm a little bit more bulletproof, that I feel like I'm a little bit
Yeah.
more prepared to whatever situation, especially I'm a kind of girl, like I love wearing boots when I go out, because I can go dancing, I can hop on the back of a motorcycle, I can also just like sit down, or I can walk for 50 minutes, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And and that part of being unapologetic is because you don't need anything. Not pushing towards consumerism or so forth, but there are so many things that you can bring and be mindful about, and there's a lot of very clean perfumes and that kind of thing, or things that have like a little bit more traceability, and I feel like kind of a good way of kind of being a little bit more apologetic is kind of taking a risk in your sensuality, And that can be via buying like a new perfume or buying a kind of dress that you wouldn't normally wear, that kind of thing.
Or a lipstick.
Yes.
You know, speaking of consumerism, there's a way to do it, to find your signature scent. You don't have to buy a whole bottle. Like there are so many companies that will allow you to get samples. That's what I've done to find the ones that I love. And I don't follow perfume trends. I want my scent to be unique to me.
But it's a very French thing too. It's like leaving your scent behind after you've left a room. There's something very powerful about that. It's almost like kind of your way of saying that you're timeless, of reminding people of the timelessness of women. Not that men don't have a timeless aspect, but kind of coming down to what we first were talking about is that women really do embody life and death. And that there's something very beautiful and powerful about that. And they embody mystery. And kind of leaning into that mystery and your own mystery through different tools is very fun and intriguing. And I think you kind of set the tone for being unapologetic when you follow that. People they're not a surprise. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And you don't have to explain yourself. You're just there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have loved every second of this conversation. Yes, you are so insightful. And oh my gosh, I'm going to have you back one day and do another photo shoot together, anything, hang out, whatever, watch you sing. I definitely want to do that. Yes. So I just want to thank you for sharing all of your insights and knowledge and your beautiful personality. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this conversation with Brigitte as inspiring as I did. She's truly a force, and I hope her insights encourage you to step into your own power and live life more unapologetically. If today's episode sparked something inside you and you're ready to tap into your own femme fatale energy, I'd love to help you capture that in a photo session. You can find me at my website, staciefrazier.com, STACIEFRAZIER, where you can reach out to book a session. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's build a community of women who embrace their inner femme fatales. And don't forget to share this episode with anyone who might need a little nudge to unleash their own femme fatale vibes. Until next time, keep owning your power, embracing your sensuality, and living life on your terms. Why am I hearing an echo?
Oh, it's because these just died.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. It's like all my devices, they're just like, nope.
Well, you know what? Just I think I have enough